Welcome to Unashamed Unafraid, a show unashamed about sexual addiction recovery and unafraid of coming unto Christ for healing.
Where we talk about real recovery stories, answer anonymous questions with experts, and share resources that actually work.
I'm your host, Steve.
And I'm your co-host, James, and we are unashamed, unafraid.
Nothing tastes better than a good anonymous Q&A.
You're right. It's going to be delicious today.
It could just be that I'm hungry. But that's not true. Jason brought me some food. Thanks, Jason. Jason always takes care of all of us in many ways, including making this sound so good. So we're here with the Unashamed crew, and we have Kristy joining us, James's better half. Not meaning that James is a bad half. How are you, Kristy?
Good, thanks. Happy to be here as always.
Happy to have you back. James, always a pleasure.
Steve, great to be here.
The Hulk of Hope, Mr. Chris Bennett.
I am here.
Indeed, you are. How many miles are you going to hike this week, Chris?
A lot, because I've already done 3 peaks. And it's now Tuesday, so I've already done 3 peaks, and I've got a big one coming up. So I'll be 25 miles or something hiking.
Chris, I thought we talked about not being in denial and that the hills at the park don't count as peaks.
Yeah, hills at the park don't count.
Totally joking, because Chris is in way better shape than I am. So we say this every time, James. But this is incredible that people submit questions.
Yeah, it's just the courage, and so grateful that they take the time to reach out to us. We have people that will reach out and even just express gratitude for what we're trying to do here. But love it when you come to us with your thoughtful questions, and because we know that if you have this question, so many other people will also.
For sure.
I love the vulnerability that people create when they send in these questions, because they get vulnerable. They're opening their hearts to us because they want answers. They're trying to figure some things out for themselves, for their spouse, for their kids, whatever.
Yeah. So for this episode, we have 2 questions. Well, we have a question, and then we have one anonymous submitter who, so we know it's a she by context, so I'll say she. So she submitted kind of some of her story, her heart, what's going on, and then had some questions. So a little bit of a variety. Before in previous episodes, we've kind of had stuff in theme, where it's like, hey, this episode is really about these questions line up about connecting with God, or these questions line up about what do I do as a spouse when, my addict husband isn't engaging or isn't getting engaged, or we've divorced and I don't have closure. So we've kind of had stuff in theme. This isn't quite that way. There's a couple different things. And so I don't know that we have any theme to necessarily put on it, but we're just going to jump in. So Chris
Yep.
lost when we played rock, paper, scissors on the front end of this. So first question, here we go.
Sweet. All right. I love God, and I sing and pray to him daily. I have an addiction to porn. I try, but I always end up back on porn. Not sure what I'm asking, but I need answers and help. So I replied back to him, just a quick response, gave him some explanation on there, and I just said, I'm going to reword your question for you, and it says, I pray and sing to God daily. Why is it that I continue to turn to porn? Can you help me? So with that, I think we'll just jump right into the question or the answers. Anybody want to go first?
So I think this is a bigger question, right?
Yeah. There's some depth to this one.
Yeah. Oh, some super bit. And he may not even know when he's submitting this question how honest in heart he was being. It's clear. And so first off, I just want to say I love you. Keep sending us some emails. Let's hang out. Just so honest in heart, because clearly, right, the singing in that, he loves God and he wants to connect with God. He wants to worship God. And so first off, mad props on that. And just an honest and heart question. But I think you said it, James. There's a lot of depth to this question. So I'm going to give it to you first.
Well, in a lot of what I've read and studied and just in my own experience, I feel like really the reason that we end up turning to our addiction is because we are looking to fill that space with God. I think John Eldredge said it this way, that, when we turn to that, we're not looking for whatever we're going to find in porn or anything else. That's not really what we're looking for. We're not looking for that. We're looking for God.
We're looking for connection.
Yeah, we're looking for that emptiness in us to be filled by God. And this emptiness is created at certain times in our lives through things we may not recognize. And when there's that void there, God can fill that void for us. And often, those of us that fall into patterns of, sexual addiction or, unwanted sexual behavior, we learned to go there because at least temporarily stopped the pain or numbed the pain or brought us some semblance of comfort. But ultimately, God is the one that can bring that to us. And how and where that void got there and why we turned to porn to try to do that, that's where the depth comes in that you're talking about, Steve.
Well, and here's Kristy, do you want your 2 cents first?
No, go ahead.
Chris, I feel like when a lot of people are struggling with addiction, they get into the all or nothing. Well, if I didn't have sexual addiction in my life, then my life would be perfect. Then my life would be, right? Like, so if I wasn't struggling with this anymore, if I had this addiction out of my life, then I will be at this point of like arrival. And I guess I kind of pose this to you, Chris, because you like are, right, decade 11. I always say a decade because I forget what it is, right? Sober, like having sexual addiction out of your life. Did you arrive? Like, have you arrived? Is life just perfect now? Like,
I wish it was perfect. But, we all have a connection, or we all have that connection with God, right? We all go to church, or, we'll pray every once in a while, whatever. We'll have that connection
when
with
you
God.
go on your hikes, you've talked a lot about that on here, right?
Yeah.
Getting in nature is big for you.
But that doesn't mean that the adversary just stops coming at us because we have this good connection with God and we have this amazing experience, or we have the spiritual experience, and then all of a sudden those temptations are totally going to go away, and they're going to go away forever. I still get temptations. It still comes at me, and I just do things differently now when those temptations come. And so I think,
but even talk about like the rest of your life.
Yeah,
like, okay, you've kind of got that one licked, right?
So I was just going to say, you were talking about, we get this licked and fixed, and is life perfect? I think most of us would say no, but Chris, you figured out how to fill the void, though, right? The void that you were turning to with the sexual addiction. You learned to fill that void with other things, and it's working for you.
yes.
So maybe just take a minute or two on that, and then go on to what Steve's talking about.
Talking about the stuff that I use to...
Yeah. How have you learned to fill that void to where you're no longer needing to, as our asker has said, I seem to end up continuing to go back to porn, though. How did you kind of turn that corner and fill that void for you?
So one of the things was from the Lifestar group that I was going to, they do a relapse prevention sheet. And that was so important to the beginning of my recovery, because I didn't know how to deal with any of the feelings that I had. When the temptations were coming up, I didn't know why the temptations were coming at me. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know what I was trying to avoid. And so by getting that relapse prevention sheet, it allowed me to be able to sit down and say, I had a slip, and then I could go to that relapse prevention sheet, and I filled it out going, okay, what were the feelings that I had before? What were the feelings that I had during, after? What was all the details, and really kind of pointing out the feelings that I had and the emotions that I was going through, so that way when I have those temptations come up again, then I could actually like pull that sheet out and be like, okay, what's going on with me? What am I looking for? Because then I started recognizing that when I do have those temptations, I'm looking for something. I'm looking for a connection. I'm looking for a closeness. I'm looking for something. Why am I trying to fill it with pornography? What else am I going to do? So I will, instead of reaching out through pornography, okay, reaching out to pornography, I'm going to reach out to other men. I'm going to feel this connection through other men that have gone through this and they know and understand the feelings that I felt before. I'm going to reach out to God, but sometimes even just reaching out to God, like I've said a few times before, is just reaching out to God isn't enough sometimes. And so I sometimes even reaching out to my wife, and I'm like, you know what? Maybe I'm just feeling disconnected from my wife for some reason. And so that kind of forced me to be like, hey, I want to connect with my wife. And it's not like connecting sexually. It was just connecting with her on an emotional level. And so just even reaching out to her as far as like, hey, how are you doing, babe? You know what? How's your day going? You know, just talking with her. And so just different things. I'm doing something different than my addiction.
Yeah.
And that's why, and then it just continues to keep going. And what's cool about that is the feeling that I get when I overcome that temptation is amazing. So because I'm like, hey, I overcame that. That's pretty awesome. And
You're
then
connected.
that I feel,
like, oh, I connected.
right. Yep.
Yeah.
So, to my point then, this question seems like really up there. It's like, hey, I'm praying to God but I keep going over here. It's like, to pointing out to the depths of this question, there's a lot more behind that.
Well, that's what I've been thinking this whole time.
Yeah.
Addiction is like a 1,000-piece puzzle to me. That's what it seemed like to me when we were going through recovery. And that's what it seemed like when I watched you fit each of those individual pieces together. The piece of connection, that was big for you early on. The piece of learning to live without shame. The piece of healthy sexual knowledge and what that looks like. That was another big piece. All of these different pieces, and they all have to come together, not at the same time, at different times, but it takes a lot of searching out different, whether that's through reading or therapy. You need some knowledge so that you can draw those puzzle pieces. Okay, let's try this puzzle piece. I've never heard of that before. Let's put that into this puzzle, see if it fits. I have a serious tendency towards sugar. And I read and read and read. And for various reasons, I'm trying to get off of sugar. And now, if sugar was displeasing to God, I would be in such serious trouble. But I go back to it time and time again.
Because it's delicious.
Because it is delicious. I keep trying, though. I keep reading. I keep doing the things. I keep putting those puzzle pieces together, learning what it does to my body. That's a huge puzzle piece. Finding ways that it benefits my body, feeling my body getting better and in less pain because of certain things, finding the benefits of it. That's another puzzle piece. So there's my 2 cents.
Well, and I think you're kind of connecting back to what James said of like so anonymous question answer. We probably just have a question for you, and that is, what are you looking for?
Right.
Because you're finding God in part of your life, and that's what's confusing you. But what else are you looking for? What other connection are you looking for? And it might be more God. It might be God differently.
It might be a brotherhood that's missing.
It might be a brotherhood that's missing. It might be a connection, right? A real connection with a spouse or children. It could be a bunch of different things. And because I think that it's that piece of knowledge, right? And you use like the puzzle, right? James put together his puzzle. You're working on a puzzle right now.
Yeah.
Right? We're all always working. P.S. If you don't have anything to work on, it'd be interesting to look in the mirror. But so we're all trying to do that. And what Chris said rings so true to me, because I don't know, every client that I've had come in to my office, that lack of knowledge is expressed one way or another. I don't know why I'm acting out. I don't know what happened. I don't know why I'm doing this. So this question is like
universal.
I mean, it's so key to
everything.
To everything.
Yep.
Right.
And whether that's sexual addiction or whether it's eating sugar or not working out or just doing the things that we want to do on a daily basis, it's a universal problem.
So to our anonymous question asker, if you find out what you are looking for, let us know. send us an email. I'd be curious to know what your response is to our question, and to anyone else who's listening. If this rings home true to you and you said, hey, this is what I'm truly looking for, I'd be curious to know. So send us an email, reach out to us on social. We'd like to know. So excellent question. Anything else on that? Anyone else have anything else on that?
Maybe get some one-on-one help for real, if that hasn't been tried.
Yep. To help do that introspective work, right? Start to figure out what that is.
So to, our anonymous question asker, we love you. There are answers. Love that you're finding joy and song and praise with God and building that relationship there.
On that one.
We strongly believe that you really can't find recovery without God. And so you're on the right path.
Totally.
And so, to what Steve was saying, what are you looking for? Let's find out what that really is for you. What do you really need? And
what are you missing?
And how can we help? Please write us back. But we love you, brother, and so grateful that you have written in and thought to ask us the question. So thank you.
And we're happy to help. And the only thing I'd add to that is God will help you.
Absolutely.
When you show what you need. When men need brotherhood, all of a sudden men start falling out of trees. When men need God, they find places they can find him. Right? When men need resources, they find a way to him. So he wants you. He wants your heart. He's going to find you. So for our second question, this is like a total gear shift. So other kind of end of the spectrum. So this is coming contextually from a woman. So we appreciate you. And she shares kind of some of her story. This is always fun because what you guys don't know is when these questions come up, everyone's sitting here, they all look at me like, do I have to read it? Is this person reading it? So, because Kristy's laughing about that now. Kristy, you want to read it for us?
Okay. I am a mom of a 22-year-old incredible son who has admitted to pornography use. Started looking consistently in 9th grade, went on a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and had great experiences quickly back into porn after the mission. He told me this after his mission. I have listened to several episodes of the podcast and have been riveted.
Well, that's nice.
Thank you.
I've been learning all I can so I can understand a little of what he is going through and so I can be in a place to help when he is ready. Fantastic mother.
Yeah, awesome mom.
Yeah. We have had multiple conversations about porn, mostly initiated by me, about 2 initiated by him. I've learned so much from your podcast about guilt, shame, emotional numbness, isolation, and recovery. I love how the podcast is brutally authentic, inspirational, atonement-centered, and incredibly hopeful. I am hopeful that he can recover from this / begin recovery before things escalate further.
He totally can, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
He has only disclosed looking and acting out pretty mildly with a girl. I know this may only be the tip of the iceberg. I also know healing is his choice and his timing. And then we get to several questions. Do you have any episodes that share someone's story who isn't married? Does it take being married and hurting someone to be ready to start healing and recovering? Does the porn addiction mean someone is also a sex addict? Does porn use always lead to acting out with people? What advice would you give me? What resources would be a good place for him to start if he agrees? I would love to talk to someone about this. What resources would you recommend for me?
So first off, I just want to bottle this mom up and sprinkle her on every kid who's ever come home from a mission.
All the moms.
No kidding.
For real.
Do you remember there was that super old movie where the kids got to go to the mommy market and buy their mom? They were all like, our mom's lame. We want a cool mom. This is like an old Disney movie. Kristy, it's real. Don't look at me like that. No, this is a real movie.
Okay.
I'm going to find the title. We're going to edit it back in. And I'm like, oh, you freakers watch it. No.
Like,
So
we're
they're
all
like
confused of what
so,
it is.
So it's like 3 kids and the mom's like, regular mom. They're like, oh, we wish our mom was cool. And so it's like magic happens, right? And there's this mommy market and they get to pick which mom they have. So there's like a circus mom and a magician mom, all these fun quotation marks mom. So they end up through the show, they pick 3 different moms. And they're like, the circus mom's so fun, but no, she's crazy. And then they're like, and of course, what's the moral of the story? At the end, they just want their own mom back.
Right.
So I wish that was real and we could bottle this mom up and put her in the mommy market for everyone to have. So awesome, not just that she loves her son, but that she's willing to look at herself and be like, how can I do this differently to help him?
And I love how proactive she's being.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, and at the same time, there's...
And not shaming.
Yep, there's appropriate boundaries, though. Sure, she's like, yep, help him when he's ready.
Yep.
And recognize that this is going to be on him and not me to fix, right? There's so many healthy things that this mother is expressing in this email.
She seems very wise.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
So first question, do you have any episodes that share someone's story who isn't married?
We're working on it.
So we work hard to be unashamed, but we're still ashamed about some things, to be honest. So 2 things that we're ashamed about. One is we do not to date have any episodes with any single men who
So that's an invitation.
Recovery. That is a big invitation. So if you are a single man working recovery, right? I'm not saying you have to be 2 years sober. We record people who are actively working recovery. So if you are working recovery and you are single, to use the LDS terms, single and ready to mingle, come share your story with us. We would love it.
And you don't have to be in Utah if you're out of state. Hey, we can do a
Half
Zoom
the people
call.
we
We can record it
out of
and
state. Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely.
be just fine.
Yep. No, we would love to have you. So what I will say to the world is we have been close on a couple.
Okay.
That's where we are.
Okay.
So I'm sorry.
Question.
And also we have to say, people always say, do you have anyone who's been divorced? Come on. So we get this question a lot from women, and we don't record women's stories, right? We focus from where we can talk, but Rise Up Restored, this podcast talked about before, they're recording women's stories. So they have some different ones on there. And we do have a couple lined up. They both have been divorced and are remarried to each other. So you can get remarried. It does happen. So we have that couple coming on, both been divorced, remarried, and okay, I'm trying to think because this episode won't come out right now and we're recording it. So in July of 2020, Tim and Callie's came out. He was previously divorced and remarried. So yes, people get remarried and it does go well. So episode 34.
Oh, and we would also love to have a female addict come onto the show and share her story with us.
We get this question all the time.
Yep. We've had quite a few people ask us if we know of any females that have been addicted to porn or sex and what their recovery story looked like. So
more than you would think, by the way.
We absolutely would love to have you come on the show. So please reach out to us. You can reach out to any one of us on the website, or if you want to email me, it's james@unashamedunafraid.com.
Chris at, Steven at, James at, Jason at, CT at, Sway at, Rachel at, Corey at. Just reach out to anyone.
So this leads into the second question, which is, does it take being married and hurting someone to be ready to start healing and recovering?
No.
Absolutely not.
Nope.
Can I broaden this too? I want to broaden this to a bigger topic about addiction recovery that bothers me. Do I have to hit rock bottom in order to recover?
Nope.
No, your rock bottom is when you throw the shovel away.
Bingo. Both Jason and I
Wise words from Todd Olson.
Wise words from Todd Olson.
Yeah.
So
they will ring true to me everywhere.
For some men,
forever.
that is the moment. Rock bottom happens to be when they do put the shovel down, like when their life is at the consequences are the biggest. But really, whether single or married is irrelevant. I would say it is when you finally decide this isn't worth living like this anymore.
Yeah.
So for Chris, it was watching the freaking Joseph Smith Praise to the Man movie on Temple Square. It wasn't when Autumn attempted suicide. It wasn't when you went through church discipline.
Right.
So that was it. You didn't have it happen in a rock bottom moment, quotation marks. And for James, you really didn't either.
So question number 3, does the porn addiction mean someone is also a sex addict?
I would say no.
Yeah.
I think there's a porn addiction. And I think there's a sex addiction because there is two different aspects of it. Sex addiction is obviously you're addicted to sex or sexual stimulation, and
which would include porn.
Yep. Masturbation, women, men, whatever the case may be. That's related to sex. Where porn, if you're a lot of men and women out there are just only addicted to pornography and masturbation, and I don't think that that's necessarily a sex addict, but more so a porn addict.
What I would, we all have our own personal opinion. So clearly, and Unashamed and Afraid, we're fine with the word addict. Our definition would be addiction means you have a pattern, and it's outside of, hey, if you would just try harder. It's outside of just a habit of, well, if you would just try harder, this would go away. So like that's how we would define addiction, that you have a pattern that's constantly working against your value system. And even though you don't want to do it because it's against your value system, it keeps happening. And that could be daily, that could be annually, that could be once a month, every 2 weeks, whatever. So I just want to like unpack that word addiction a little bit and be like, whoa. So when like people don't identify as an addict, that like the world doesn't end. Some people feel like that's shaming because it's like once an addict, always an addict. Not something we believe here. And we use the word addiction. So like that word gets thrown around a little bit different. And so also I think with sex addict and porn addict, so particularly in a lot of church cultures, porn addict means I don't act out with other women. I only use porn, like you said, Chris, right? Where sex addiction means I do act out with other people. So that's one way to define it. The other way to define it is to say sexual addiction is about sexual behavior, and it's a spectrum. So I would use that term as a spectrum term. So I could say someone who's having a bunch of extramarital affairs like Chris or myself story, I would say that's a sex addict. Someone like Jason who's only looking at porn, I'd say also a sex addict. Where we were on the scale and the spectrum, that's all kind of different, but it was sexually compulsive behavior and we were using it addictively. But I guess, and James, you'll clear this all up for us, but I would say is like, depends on who you're talking to and when. There are some people who use these differently. Some people are saying, I know people addicted to porn that would be like, I am not a sex addict and I don't have an addiction.
Yeah.
I have a porn compulsive behavior.
Yep.
My honest opinion is like, who cares what you call it?
Yep.
It's a pattern in your life and you're doing something against your value system that's involving sexual behavior. However you want to label that. If I'm being honest, I don't care.
Yeah. Even though you want to stop.
Even though you want to stop.
Yeah.
Yep. A pattern that you want to stop in your life. So, and you'll hear me use interchangeably on this show over and over again over the episodes. I'll call it unwanted sexual behavior or sex addiction, right? Or
we'll say pornography addiction because that's how people identify.
Yeah, because and I'll try to use all those terms interchangeably, knowing that all of those things can be true or
there's
accurate
extremes in each one of them.
Yeah.
I have a buddy of mine that labeled addiction or explained addiction in a great way. His name's Ben Irwin, and he said,
nice job, Ben.
Addiction is a spiritual state where agency is lost or stolen.
Yeah. So they use that. That's a quote from Nelson in the, Jason would know this better than me, in step 1, right? It talks about that will. That when we give into addiction or it suspends our free agency, our will is actually suspended. So if you want, from that angle. But again, what I would answer to her, we're talking kind of the world. What I would answer to her is, it doesn't matter what you call it. your son's got something going on and he needs healing. To our first question,
Right.
What's he missing? And this kind of folds right into her next question, right? Does porn use always lead to acting out with people?
Nope.
No.
James and I, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I used porn, but I never acted out with other people.
For years and years and years.
No,
Meaning
ever.
you looked at porn for years and
Yeah,
years and years
yeah.
without it escalating to acting out.
I think you and James and I think you and I had a conversation once, and you're like, dude, I don't know how you ever took that next step, because that has never ever crossed my mind.
Yeah.
To go to that next level.
That was never even
of
attractive
stepping out.
to me to act out with anybody before or after I was married. And I was using porn both, throughout that time frame. Particularly after getting married, it became super unattractive to me. The thought of even stepping outside of the marriage.
But I think it's interesting that you said even before marriage, it was never anything that you wanted.
No, I didn't want to act out that way. No.
So I had a conversation with a guy once when I was early in recovery, and he was like, "Hey, can I ask you a question?" So my story, a lot of prostitution, right? It's primarily my form of sexually acting out, and his was sleeping with coworkers. So he came to me, and he's like, "Dude, how can I just ask you, like, how did you do that?" And I'm like, "What?" And he's like, "Dude, isn't that so sketchy? Weren't you worried about like getting a disease or the police or whatever?" And in my mind, as he's talking to me, I'm like, "You sleep with coworkers. What you do is so sketchy. Like, even as a full-blown addict, I would never do that. Like, lose your job. All those people know you and your family. Like, what are you, dumb?" And he's looking at me like, "Why would you do prostitution? What are you, dumb?" So there's two addicts looking at each other saying, "I would never act out
that guy.
the
I
way
was
you're acting out."
Never ever tempted to go to prostitutes or anything. I was too scared. I'm
Right.
like,
And
no
then
way.
and then I look at you and I'm like, "What are you, crazy?" Like, even as an addict. So people are different. How they do behavior is different, right? Like from a clinical perspective, like when talking to someone, why do you choose addiction? We get back to that question. And the sexual behavior they're choosing is going to be very telling of what they're looking for.
Yeah.
So one thing I do with clients is we break down what type of porn they're looking at, and it's super telling as to what they're looking for.
Okay.
Because it's like, well, what porn do you look at? Well, isn't porn? No, it is not. So why are you looking at that porn? So a quick light example was one guy said, "I won't ever look at porn that has more than one man in it." Why? Because he's looking to porn for validation that he's enough. And if there's multiple men in it, then it'd be questioned as whether or not he's enough. And that he was like, whoa. But never, ever, ever does he look at porn with multiple men. So there's a pattern. So there's a reason why, Chris, you chose affairs and I chose prostitution. What we were looking for in addiction, that sexual behavior, for whatever reason, soothes that. So does it always escalate? No. And there's a reason why addicts are acting out the way that they're acting out.
No, it may not escalate to other people, but it can definitely escalate through the types of pornography that they use.
Yeah.
And the frequency and time.
Right.
But I'll argue that even like I'm a living example that for me, it didn't escalate in my usage in the type of pornography that I was using. There were certain boundaries. I just was like, yep, never going there. And it was so it stayed pretty flat. So, I mean, medically or technically, right, I don't fit that addiction mold because it's not a continuing escalation. If you look at the clinical term of addiction, right? Mm-hmm. But still, It was a compulsive behavior that went against my value system that I could not stop on my own.
And I think the real point of talking about all this in my mind is this: it will continue to lead to your destruction, or you will find recovery.
Yeah.
So your life is going to continue to get more disrupted, have more destruction, and go more downhill.
Yeah.
So whether you're looking at porn for a half hour once a month,
sure,
or you're soliciting a prostitute every week, like at the end of the day, both are going to lead to you being an empty, hollow, shame-based, dead person.
Well said.
And so Jason just texted this to us, and he's like, it leads to death or recovery. That's where, if you enter this game, those are the two places you end up.
Yeah.
And that's right on. For some people, death comes quicker, right? They're there in their late 20s, early 30s, like, oh, I am at this crossroads and this is super real. For some men, it's in their 60s. And so again, it's relative, but you will end up. So I just wouldn't get hung up on, is it porn only, this only? It's like this pattern is destroying this person.
I think what lies behind her question is fear for her son's future.
Right. Is he going to have to get married and ruin that marriage
right.
before he's going to find his answers? And again, no, I mean, he can, as soon as he stops digging, he's done. And, I know that I've been to many phase 1 groups here at LifeStar where there's a lot of young guys single, never been married, and they're looking to turn their lives around right now.
100%.
And, I applaud those guys for, having the courage to step up and do that now and before it becomes a worsening pattern in their life. And to Jason's point, before they experience more of that death, because, it's such a great point, because me being trapped in my extended porn cycle where I was only looking about every 3 months, and it was for short duration, sometimes even just an hour or two, and then I'd be done for another 3 months. The death part came in that shame spiral and that self-loathing, and it just got worse and worse and
depression.
Worse. Absolutely. So yeah, just, it doesn't have to escalate as far as what you're doing, but spiritually it just doesn't heal. And
that death can mean all sorts of different things. The spiritual death or actual death.
Emotionally dead.
Yeah. I was definitely emotionally dead.
Yeah. So I think
what advice would you give her? That's her next question.
I think
Kristy.
this is the heart. I think this is the meat of her question. She wants advice and she wants resources. Advice I would give: just keep being an open-hearted, safe place for your son to land with questions or disclosures or resources. Be a source of resources when he's ready.
Making it safe for him to be able to come to you and
but give her a specific example of that. If I'm her listening, it's like, make it safe for him. And it's like, I know. I've already listened to a couple episodes.
Right.
How do I do that?
I think she's already doing that.
So as a mother, say that.
Yeah. I mean, as a mother,
approach your 20-year-old son and role play here. What would you say? What would it sound like for you to invite him to know that you're a safe place to land in this particular area?
Hey, I stumbled on this really great podcast that's got a lot of episodes from guys that have found themselves addicted to pornography or unable to stop even though they want to. I think, you might want to give that a listen.
Or even be specific on one that you've heard before and be like, hey, you know what? I heard this one podcast and it really spoke to my heart, and I would love for you if just open your heart and listen to this.
And see what you think.
Along with what you just said.
Right. Yeah. And if he's the evasive type, which I think
most of us are.
Mine is. Yeah. If they're evasive, maybe just invite him at a relaxed time of the night where he's not trying to like go somewhere with friends or something. Like, hey, let's sit down together and listen to this. I just want you to listen to this with me, this thing that I found.
Yeah.
And
from my perspective and just what I would have liked, I think would have been basically just something along the lines of like, you know what, son, I love you no matter what. There is nothing that you could say to me or that you could talk to me about that would somehow make me love you any less. And I would
name the bad things. Yeah. I would say the words that we're all afraid to say.
And so, son, I don't care whether it's prostitution to pornography to...
If you sleep with your girlfriend, right. If you pay for porn, if you whatever.
I want you to know that all of that will not change my love for you. That you're safe to talk to me about these things. And I am more than happy to love you through that and help you in any way that I can. I think those are for me, that's the kind of language I would have liked to have heard.
And the other one I would add to that is addicts are afraid that they have to be honest. And there's a reason why you haven't been honest. Like, they're not just dishonest because they think it's fun to hide it from everyone, right? It's because they're deathly afraid that no one will love them, right? That's why I'm not honest.
If they knew the real me, they would not love me.
Right. That's why I'm not honest. I'm like, if I'm honest, me and Kayla are done. If I'm honest, all the guys in Unashamed are gonna be like, what's your problem, bro? If I'm honest, right? That's the fear. And so I think it's really invitational too to say, you don't have to be honest with me. I'm willing to sit with you in this space, son, even if you don't share everything with me. I'm not gonna force you to share everything with me. I'm not gonna try and like get a confession out of you.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna try and find out everything that's going on.
That's so good.
Right. And frankly, don't, because you won't. Like, if they don't want to tell you, you won't find out anyway. So it's a futile exercise.
Or if you do happen to go, nosing through somebody's business and they're not ready to share, that's gonna do nothing
you'll
except
blow
create
up the
resentment.
relationship.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you'll blow up the relationship.
Yeah.
So just say, I'm willing to sit with you in this space, and you don't have to be honest with me.
I'm talking mother to son, other relationships, I guess.
Yeah, we're talking parent to child, right?
Yep.
And kind of, well, I mean, and even with spouses, it's just a boundary, right?
Right.
Hey, if you don't want to be honest with me, that's fine. I also don't want to live in the same house as you.
Exactly.
I don't want to stay married to you. I don't want to. So as a spouse, you still have those boundaries, but even as a spouse, you can't make them do anything. And Chris, we share that over and over again. But how Autumn came to you and was like, "Is there more? You don't have to tell me. I just want to know if there's
Right.
more."
And
that
this-
was her
Right.
creating that space.
She created the safety for me to be able to say, okay, you know what? I can talk to you.
Right. But this is an adult son we're talking about,
Right.
not a young boy.
Yeah.
But I think
either
I think
way-
it works out for
I
any
agree.
of it.
I agree either way,
Same
but there's a little
principles, yeah.
more like with an adult.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For a little more. Say it
A
specifically.
little more responsibility for her to respect his boundaries
Yeah.
and his own privacy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. I agree with that. Resources for him.
Unashamed and Afraid.
Yes,
Great.
sir.
Great
Yes, sir.
podcast.
Killer. Have you heard these guys?
I've heard it's amazing.
Yeah.
Host is kind of annoying, but there's some good
the
content.
wisdom that they put down, especially their guests. I
Yes.
I was just about to say the guests that they have on there are great.
Yep.
mean, okay.
Okay, but legitimately, I think we're a good resource.
Okay. Now that we're done patting our own backs.
I do believe in what we do. We are not the only podcast in the world as well, right? I like the Next Step guys have a good one. Jeff Stewart has one called Illuminate, which is a really good podcast that kind of dives into some of the stuff from the therapist perspective. So that can be some kind of soft stuff. I had who's a young man, a client this last week who we were talking about like his deeper emotional issues, and he paused, and he's been like 3 or 4 times, and he was like, I didn't know starting in this how little it had to do with my sexual behavior. Like, because he finally had gotten like, it's about what he's looking for, to go back to our first question. Right. And he's figuring that out now, and which is awesome. He's the coolest guy. But so it doesn't have to be a resource that is like how to stop the 5 steps, how to stop looking at porn. And in fact, to be honest, a lot of those aren't that helpful. So
what was the
books around healing?
What was the Holocaust book that you read that was so healing for you?
Oh, it was Viktor Frankl.
Man's Search for Meaning.
Man's Search. That's a great one, right? Yeah. So anything that has testimony of truth, this is why we love Wild at Heart. Wild at Heart, not even about addiction. It's like the freaking best book. So we obviously recommend that one for sure. And I tell you, go to our resources page. Our resources page, that's us saying top resources for addicts are these. Yeah. So for anonymous question asker and anyone else. Yeah. And if anyone has a resource that they think we're not looking at, dude, send us an email.
Yeah, please do.
That's how we find a lot of this stuff. I have to be honest, is people are like, have you read this book? I was like, what book? And they're like, bro, this book changed my recovery. I'm like, really? And then we look at it and it's like, oh, right. So right now, like one that I've stumbled on in several circles this last 3 or 4 months is Unwanted. Mm-hmm. Right, James, you brought that. You were one of the first people to bring that up to me. Reading that one by Jay Stringer. Mm-hmm. Right, so that's a really good one. So there's a lot of stuff out there, but I guess let's give her this answer. Like, is there a certain order in which you should do resources or just throw it all at the wall and whatever sticks?
I think
let him be the
let the son, kind of guide that. I mean, for me, I dove into kind of Brene Brown and a whole bunch of shame stuff early on because it super stood out to me and resonated with me just how deeply wounded I was there. And so I dove into that for a lot early on. I know for other guys, it was different things. Some of them, it was like, man, I started doing the 12 steps and that just hit me. And that was what I needed.
12 steps is another resource.
Right. And so it's different for every person and what they need, I think.
Yeah.
And so to your point, Steve, it's like, let's, just point them to the resources and let them just dip their toe into each one and really start to dive in as they feel like they need it. I'd recommend therapy as well. Going and seeing a therapist would be phenomenal because that can help them process what they're reading, seeing, feeling, and help point them in.
Yeah, therapy is a good way to orient, particularly individual therapy is a good way to orient for what you specifically need. Because, with clients that I have, it's like, it's across the board different. Because I have a guy come in who has no relationship with God and isn't that interested in one. And it's like, okay, so I guess we won't start there, right? Let's start somewhere. And then other guys that are like, I know this is all about God. Where do I find him in this? And I'm like, oh, exact opposite. I guess we're going to start with some God stuff.
Yeah.
So go, so it can get differently, but yeah. And then the other part is like the world is always changing too. Like there's always new resources coming out, new movies. So I'll give you two that are ends of the spectrum. So the first is, and we've had Dr. Skinner on here for a Q&A. He just came out with his book, Treating Sexual Addiction, A Compassionate Approach to Recovery. Dr. Skinner runs Addo. Hopefully Addo gets mad.
And that would be a great
clinical
resource.
Director at Addo, I think is his technical title.
That would be a great resource for the mother in this situation.
For the mother and the son. It's a good, so Jason actually here did the audio for the book. So he knows it probably more than he wants to know it.
And it'd be able to help her understand him better as well.
Yeah, that's a good kind of 101. And then other end of the spectrum too is there's the independent Christian series, The Chosen, that just came out. There's another Christian movie called The Heart of Man. We've recommended that one a lot.
The Heart of Man is an amazing movie.
Amazing movie. And The Chosen is totally just about Christ's life. It's a little bit different than how we do in LDS culture. And that can be really empowering. And so to see Jesus a little bit in a different way, not doctrinally different, just culturally a little different, that could be really empowering. That could be huge for addiction recovery. And it's not how to do addiction 101. So there's some stuff. Hopefully that is helpful.
I wouldn't recommend giving him a list of here's all these resources because he's going to look at it and be like, whoa, that's way too much for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That looks like homework.
Yeah.
And maybe even just ask him, hey, would you like me to help you find some resources? Yeah. And, go to him and see if he's open to even getting more resources because he may be in a position where he's like, you know what? No, I'm okay right now.
Yeah.
Or, I don't know. You just.
And whatever resource you look into. So I'll use this example. The number one resource that church leaders will send people to is 12-step. Well, you should go to the church's 12-step program. My knee-jerk reaction to all church leaders is, have you been to one? That's a very different invitation. Hey, James, you should go to a 12-step meeting. It's for people like you. Have I been to one? Oh, no, I've never been to one, but I think you should go.
So how different is that invitation when I'm like, hey, Steve, how would you like it if I went with you to your first meeting or subsequent meetings?
And I've been to one of these. I've been to one of these before and I kind of know about it and I think it could be a good fit for you. So that's different as a parent saying, hey, son, here's a book. It says on the cover that it's to help people with sexual addiction. Think that might be what you have. I think this is for you. Mm-hmm. That's very different than, hey, I just read this book by Dr. Skinner and it really made me think about some things and I love you. And I was just thinking, I'm like, man, is this stuff true for my son? I just wanted to connect with you on that. So I've kind of been reading this book. Would you be willing to read it with me?
Like creating safety, right?
And I really liked this couple of pages or this chapter or this quote or two out of here. What do you think of these two quotes? And then, it's like, here's a little taste and see if that's something that he wants
So
to go
I'm
for.
thinking, I'm a 22-year-old kid. I know I'm struggling with stuff. I'm having a hard time. I walk up to my bed one night when I'm going to bed, and there's a note from my mom saying, I love you. I care about you so much. I've been reading this. It's been meaningful to me. Here's a quote in here I just wanted to share with you. And there's the book with that page marked and highlighted. Likelihood of that getting read, pretty high. And in fact, there's a really good example of this in Dave's story, who he recorded. His mom did this. His mom would leave notes on his bed. I love you. Come back. Find God. Right? And Dave had multiple addictions, right? Had drug addiction and sexual addiction. So the softer, the kinder, the more open that invitation. And that's why if you're familiar with these resources, that's going to make you so much more empowered to share them than just grabbing something off the shelf because we said it was a good idea and trying to hand it to them.
Another little tiny piece of advice that came to my mind just while we were sitting here is and I don't know how you'd practically go about doing this, but maybe see if you can try to help him feel less alone in this struggle. And I don't know how you as his mother would accomplish that, but ideas, guys.
Support him having good friends. Be supportive of that.
Understand the statistics even.
Right. Even hitting him with some stats about like, look, 90% of you guys are, I promise you, if you are sitting in a room, you are not the only one. Like,
yeah.
Maybe even encourage him to like find a really trusted friend that he feels like wouldn't freak out or whatever,
Well, because he's probably still dealing with the same thing.
Right.
Yeah. And just don't get in the way. Let's be honest. Maybe that's a rude way. That's kind of a rude way to say that. I don't know how else to say it though. But if he's, for example, if you want him to connect with friends, when you go boating as a family, don't be like, no friends. No, you want your son to have friends. So maybe say to your son, hey, do you want to bring one of your friends boating with us? Right? Or if curfew's midnight and you're like, I really like those two guys he's hanging out with. I really hope he becomes friends with these guys. Maybe if he comes home at 12:30, don't rail on him. Like, so sometimes I think with parents, we kind of look at that small thing and it's like you kind of are missing the big picture. You're missing the boat. So I'd say as a parent, do things to encourage him where to he's going to connect with relationships. Yeah. So whatever you can do to encourage that and not stifle that. With your family system, family culture, family shame, right? If he's really into golfing and you guys all think golf is stupid, it's all about tennis. If he's going to find friends golfing, maybe get over it. Right. And be a golfer. Yeah. Because if he's going to find real friends there, do it. So, holy cow. Talk about excellent questions. Yeah.
All of them.
So when we read this, when it came around, we were like, we can actually just do a whole episode probably on just this one because she's asked so many good questions. That's a whole episode in and of itself. Mm-hmm. So, wow. I just want to say what I said at the beginning. Rockstar job, Mom.
Yeah, this kid is so lucky to have you.
So lucky to have you. And I want to acknowledge for you that it must be really hard to have a son who's struggling like this. Yeah. And that has to be really hard on you. And so I hope that you're finding the healing that you need for you because you deserve to have healing. Your son is your son, and he's also God's son. And God's got him. God's not going to drop him. God's not going to abandon him. God's not going to forget about him. And he hasn't forgotten about you and your labors as a mom. So I just want to tell you, I know he loves you, and there's healing for you too in this.
Amen.
Amen.
Yeah. Oh, well said.
Awesome courage to our anonymous questions, to both of our question askers. If you have any anonymous questions, we hope you'll ask them. So you can go to the website, unashamedandunafraid.com, and submit them there. If you like what we're doing, you want to help with our efforts and help fund people to get resources and help, you can donate and become an outsider. As an outsider, you get lots of bonus content and cool things like that. So you can also go on unashamedandunafraid.com/donate. Connect with us on social media at unashamedandunafraid, Facebook, Instagram. I'm looking at everyone saying, did I leave anything out? Give us 5 stars on iTunes.
If you've got a story to share, please reach out.
Reach out if you've got a story.
Especially if you're single right now. We're looking for some.
Ready to mingle.
Single or female.
Single, female. Yep. That'd be great. We'd love to hear from you.
Divorce story. Divorce.
Yeah.
Love it. I mean, not that comes out wrong. Whether divorced or not, we love you. Everyone can have a full, beautiful life. And until next time that Kristy comes on the podcast with us.
I love it.
We will miss you.
I love being here and feeling like I'm helping in some small way.
Totally helping. Thanks for being here. And until next time, outsiders, we love you. Everyone listening, thank you for joining us, and remain unashamed and unafraid.